Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to Season 17 of the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series presented by SM Racing Products. Today, we're here doing things a little bit differently for the ASRC Oval Series. We're going to be making a little bit different from what we normally see out here. As you can see here on our lovely broadcast cameras, there's a couple of right turns here at this speedway as we are here at the wonderful Lime Rock Park up in Lakeville, Connecticut for our second road course here of the season, clocking in at 1.46 miles in length or 2.46 kilometers for those of you who use the metric system. Going to be a bit of an interesting one here. This evening is going to be a 30-minute timed race here this evening. Of course, 2 weeks ago, drivers took to the Road Atlanta for a little bit of road course racing action, and I hear that that was a bit of a controversial race. Unfortunately, not able to make it out to broadcast that race, but definitely going to be very interesting to see how drivers manage to make things work out here. Of course, very historic track here in the northeastern United States, opened up back in 1956, considered probably one of the fastest road courses in the United States, especially at this classic layout that we are using. It is all pretty much smooth and simple high-speed corners here. There's really only one big braking zone on the track, and that is down into turn number 1. So definitely going to be curious to see how these drivers manage to make these little mini stock cars work around there. 31st time that ASRC has visited this track, but only the 3rd time that the ASRC Oval Series has been here. Of course, ASRC as a league has been around since 2017 and was founded as a road course racing league. So no surprise here that one of the most classic and iconic road courses on the iRacing.com platform, especially at the beginner level, has been used in this league so many times, but only 3 times in the Oval Series, and the last 2 times were in the Street Stock, a car that arguably handles a little bit better than this one, so definitely will be curious to see how things work out for these drivers here this evening. Right now, though, we actually don't have our race gridding quite yet like we normally would expect to see here. We are actually in the middle of qualifying right now. Drivers out here making some laps on the speedway. Take a look down here. How about our current championship points leader, Garrett Hess, working on his 2nd lap right now. He is currently leading the points by a pretty considerable margin here, leading by 21 points over Garrett Streets right now coming into tonight's event, and still half the season left to go. Hess won the race back, or no, actually he didn't. He came back in 4th at Road Atlanta, but almost every other race here this season, Garrett Hess has taken home the checkered flag. And coming across the line here, going to not improve his lap time. No, it will improve his lap time just a little bit. His qualifying time seems to be showing up different here than his actual race time. There we go. Now it's updating correctly. But it's going to be Brian Sabelski that takes home the pole here for the time being. Of course, still plenty of time left to go in this qualifying session. About 6 minutes left for these drivers to put their qualifying times down. How about we take a look down here at Garrett Streets here. He's on his outlap right now. This is single car qualifying, just to be clear. So these drivers have the track to themselves to set these qualifying laps. They don't have to worry about running into each other. But we'll just have to see how Garrett Streets does here as he comes across the line to start his initial lap for this qualifying run. Driver out of Topeka, Kansas, and currently 2nd in the championship point standings here. Just behind him, only 7 points back, is Brian Sabelski in 3rd, then Joshua Rudolph only 2 points back from there in 4th. Mark Royce back in 5th, also only 2 points back. Really, aside from the pretty monumental lead that Garrett Hess has built up over the rest of the field in terms of points, every other position battle in the championship point standings is single digit, which really just puts into perspective just how massive the 21-point lead Garrett Hess has over everyone else really is right now. Street's heading down through the tail end of the course here. We'll see how this lap manages to shake up for him. A little bit of a wiggle coming out of the corner, but heading down the San Posey straight, looking pretty all right here. Coming across the line, that is going to be a 59.84 for that driver. And then goes off the track for lap number 2, so it looks like that will invalidate his second qualifying lap attempt, unfortunately. It does look like we might be having a little bit of issues here with our timing and scoring pilot, so let's try and see if we can't get the corrected times up on there for y'all. And there we go. I think that's looking a little bit better now, has the proper correct times here. I was going to say, like, most of these drivers have not set a qualifying time yet, so I'm not quite sure why they were showing up as having qualifying times. As Garrett Street's big oopsie daisy coming up through that uphill section of the course there. And he's going to bring it back down to pit lane. Let's see who else we can ride on board here for qualifying. At the time being, Corey Logan is the only driver on the track, and it looks like they are on their way back in here this evening. Corey right now being scored back in the 6th position, a little bit off the pace here in terms of qualifying, at least for the time being. 5 more drivers that have still yet to qualify. Daniel Sparks, Joshua Rudolph, Derek Murphy, Michael Sparks, and Mark Kluge all still needing to qualify here this evening. Or at least they have the opportunity to. They don't necessarily have to. The option is there for them, but if they don't want to do it, then more power to them, I reckon. But still 3 minutes left in qualifying, so they have the opportunity to do it, should they so desire. Of course, only a 7-corner track here at this Lime Rock Park Speedway. No chicanes here, so it's going to be a little bit of the more simplified layout. Figure that would be the best way to handle these cars here this evening, considering the little bit of issues they had back at Road Atlanta a couple of weeks ago. Also going to be having some very exciting news from League Administrator Mr. Jason Gardner after tonight's event. Going to be announcing what the plans are for season number 18 of the ASRC Oval Series. Of course, going to be broadcasted here just the same as always on 10 p.m. Monday night Eastern Standard Time. And of course, if you're looking to join a league, this league is always open to new drivers. The only requirement is to be clean and respectful. And while we are halfway through season number 17, season number 18 will be right around the corner. And why not come on out here, have some fun on a Monday night, and maybe get a little bit better at driving while you're at it. But unfortunately, looking like not really any other drivers will be taking the opportunity to qualify here this evening. So 6 drivers will be lining up. Make that actually 5. It looks like we've got words that one of the drivers out here in the field is not going to be able to make it to the actual race here this evening. So that will be making this a 10-car field here this evening. But 10 cars, you know, at a 1.4, 1.5 mile speedway, really not all that bad, considering some of the larger tracks that the ASRC Oval Series has been to. It's crazy to think that this road course is shorter than some of the ovals that the ASRC Oval Series has visited. Really puts into perspective just how small this track actually is. That said, though, only 40 seconds left in qualifying, so it looks like this will be pretty much our starting lineup as we get ready to go green flag racing, get these drivers grid up. Ryan Svelski going to be taking the pole in that number 85 McConey Setup Shop entry, driver out of Denver, Colorado. One of the well-known road course ringers here of this league, shockingly, as far as I can tell in our stat book, has not taken home a win at the Lime Rock Park, despite the fact that he was such a prolific driver in the Attrition Road Series and the Attrition Sports Car Series. I'm not seeing any wins to his name here at Lime Rock Park, so definitely could be interesting to see this driver potentially take home his first win at Lime Rock Park, even after all these years, almost 7 years of competition here in the league. But we will just have to see how things go. But it's time for drivers to make their way down to the starting grid, so let's see how things line up here for tonight's event. Starting out on the pole here in the number 85, that's the driver we were just talking about, Mr. Brian Sabelski in the McConey Setup Shop entry. He's going to be starting off on the pole here this evening in that number 85 machine. Starting his outside in the number 12, that's going to be our current championship points leader, the number 12 of Garrett Hess in the Hardcore 10 OC entry, driver out of Mechanicsville, Maryland. Leading the points by 21, the only driver to have a double-digit gap over any other driver in the field in terms of points. Back in third, though, going with the 93, Mr. League Administrator of Jason Gardner in the ASRC entry. He's going to be starting off back in third. Back in fourth in that number 7 machine, going to be Mark Royce, driver out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, followed by the number 15 of Garrett Streets in the SM Racing Products number 15. He's going to be rolling off back in 5th. Back in 6th, that's going to be the CZ Robotics number 24 of Corey Logan, followed by one of our Mooselander drivers. That's going to be the 42 of Michael Sparks back in 7th. Then at 8th, it's going to be the 78 of Derek Murphy, still running an unsponsored paint here in season number 17. Someone put a logo on that number 78 machine. He deserves it after all the trials and tribulations he's been through here in this league, but he is still kicking, and the grid is starting to get rolling here. How about back in 9th, though, in the number 45, one of the K9P Racing drivers, that's going to be Mark Kluge in the Motor Racing Network number 45. Then back at 10th, rounding out the tail end of the field here, is Daniel Sparks, unfortunately having a bit of a mechanical failure, not going to be able to make it out to the grid here tonight. So it's going to be the 188 of Joshua Rudolph, also in the K9P Racing entry, driver out of Medford, Wisconsin in that 188. He's going to be rounding out the tail end of the field here this evening. So 10 cars, going to be 30 minutes on the clock for these drivers to get as much as they can done here at the Lime Rock Park. Definitely bound to be an exciting one. We've seen how road courses have gone in the past for these drivers. Definitely a different experience out here for a lot of them. And it's going to be a very exciting spectacle to see all throughout the field. Going to be some interesting battles on the front, some interesting battles back in the mid-pack. And really, it could be anyone's game here in this 30-minute spectacle. Pace car heading down into the downhill section, into the final corner of the speedway. We are going to be getting ready to go green flag racing here in just a moment. Of course, thank you all for tuning in here tonight. Let's give it up for these ASRC Oval Series drivers taken to the road course at Lime Rock Park. Pace car is off down in the safety of pit lane. We are slowly but surely bringing it to the field. Green flag up in the air here at Lime Rock Park, and the drivers sailing down into turn number 1. 30 minutes up on the clock. So far, so good for all these drivers. Everyone seems to be making it through turns number 1 A-okay, at least for the time being. Single filing out here just a little bit. Definitely fair to see. This is probably the tightest section of the track here through these S's. But so far, so good. Everyone's keeping their cars pointed in the right direction. We'll see what these drivers are able to do as they head down No-Name straight up into the uphill section for turn number 5 of the 7-turn speedway. You can see these drivers are outright getting a little bit of air time coming out the corner here, and one driver's around. That's the 42 of Michael Sparks, hard into the inside wall. Immediately takes the tow down to pit lane. And it looks like the green flag is still up in the air for the time being. Another driver a little bit off the speedway. That's the number 15 of Garrett Streets. Streets losing a bit of ground there, but still keeping it pointed in the right direction. A big lockup going into turns number 1 there for Jason Gardner. Hard on the brakes. Tons of tire smoke pouring out the car. And then another driver potentially around here. That's the 45 spun around down in turn number 1. Kluge able to get turned around, pointed back in the right direction here. Gets it going once again. That's going to bump Kluge back down to the 8th position. But how about up here in this battle for the race lead? Garrett Hess, Brian Sabelski, Jason Gardner, Mark Royce. All nose to tail here as they head down into the downhill section. Heading down into that ever so high speed turn number 7 to head back down the Sam Posey straight here. And Garrett Hess continues to lead the way over the rest of the field. Only about 0.7 of a second here, as just behind Sabelski and Gardner are nose to tail here. Again, lots of tire smoke coming out of the number 93 heading down to turns 1 and 2 here. $27 minutes left to go. It looks like Michael Sparks, unfortunately, has had to pack it up here for the evening. Looks like he got some pretty critical damage to that race car. The crew is saying that car is done. They have already packed it up and loaded it back up into the hauler here. But everyone else here on the field still is chugging. We've got it down to 9 cars. Those 9 cars are still on the lead lap for the time being, as Brian Zabelski a little bit over driving turn number 6 there, going a little bit down in the grass, but manages to get it back up on the raceway. No harm, no foul here. These cars are slipping and sliding all around the speedway here at the Lime Rock Park. A little bit further back, there's a side-by-side battle going on, coming out of turn number 7 for Joshua Rudolph and Derek Murphy. And Garrett Street's been involved in this battle as well. It looks like Rudolph might be a little bit off the pace here. Murphy sailing on by in that number 78 here on the outside, going down into turn number 1. Not quite able to make it stick and get around him, though. He's going to lose a little bit of ground there. Joshua Rudolph going to be able to hang on to the 6th position, but he is up +4 from where he qualified right now. Most improved driver on the speedway since the drop of the green flag. And still 26 minutes left to go here in tonight's event. Still plenty of racing action for these drivers to throw hands with each other. A little bit further up in the field, we have another side-by-side battle here. Jason Gardner battling out with the 7 machine of Mark Royce. Side-by-side battle and big wiggle coming out of the number 93 of Jason Gardner. He's going to lose the position to Mark Royce coming out of turn number 7. We'll see if he can't back it down a little bit going down to turn number 1, if we're going to see that tire smoke pouring out the back. Not out of Gardner, but we're going to see it coming out the 7 of Mark Royce here. Big tire smoke coming out of the right front going down into turn number 1. Of course, biggest braking zone on the speedway here, so not a big surprise that some of these drivers in these tiny mini stock Swifted are absolutely... well, stock brakes on these machines. Definitely not exactly made for these high-speed corners with these big braking zones. But now we have a 4-way battle here for the 5th position. Garrett Street's leading the way in front of Rudolph. Then we have Logan and Murphy side by side for 7th. Logan going to be able to make that pass here. We'll see how these drivers fare heading into the uphill turn number 5. And you can see again, these drivers are getting a little bit of air time coming up that hill there. That's just how light and nimble these cars are. Definitely quite a treat to see just how much these drivers are able to throw these cars around the speedway. And 5 minutes in the books here, going to be 24 minutes and a half left to go here at the Lime Rock Park. Side by side once again for Logan and Rudolph. Murphy having a bit of trouble going down there into turn number 1. He's going to end up down in the grass. Gets him pointed back in the right direction, though. Losing a little bit of ground here, but no damage to the car, and frankly, that is half the battle. Derek Murphy going to get around Kluge here as well, as Kluge tries to get that car wound back up and get rolling once again. And it looks like Murphy has that car rolling once again. It's about a 5-second gap back from the rest of the field, but he has it rolling. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple more drivers make some mistakes here this evening. And as I say that, Brian Zabelski kind of overdrives it down, and turn number 1 has to get hard on the brakes to get that car load down. Take a quick look back here at that number 85, and big tire lockup, and just a little bit down the grass there. Definitely nothing too catastrophic. Didn't spin out or anything, so he's got it still pointed in the right direction. Speaking of things pointed in the right direction, though, I feel like we need to take a moment. Let's look back at what happened back on lap number 1 to the 42 of Michael Sparks. We did not get a proper replay of that incident here with that driver. So let's take a quick look back at that. See what exactly took this driver out of the race here. Heading down to turn number 5 into the uphill section. And you can see the front tires just lift up off the ground, and there was absolutely no control in that 42 machine. Let's take a ride on board with him here going into the uphill, seeing what this driver saw on board as the front of his car lifted off the ground. And there was no stopping that car from slamming into that tire barrier. So that was what caused our first driver of the evening to get taken out of the race. How about taking a look back here at this side-by-side battle between Joshua Rudolph and Corey Logan. Corey now a big tire lockup down into turn number 1. These cars really struggling to get on the brakes, get these cars slowed down, going into that big braking zone. I'll tell you what, it's opened up the opportunity for some crazy aggressive moves out of these drivers. Logan starting to pull away from that 188 of Rudolph, though. It definitely seems like Rudolph using maybe a bit of different gearing from the rest of the field here. Loses a bit of momentum in the corners, but he seems to gain the speed back up into the faster straightaway sections as Corey goes a little bit too fast down to turn number 6. That might give Rudolph the opportunity to make a run coming through or out of turn number 7. Not quite able to. We take a look down here at the track map and see roughly how spread out all these drivers are. As Mark Kluge a little bit off the speedway there. He's into the outside wall coming out of turn number 7, heading down the Sam Posey straight. Maybe a little bit of damage to that number 45 machine, but it looks like he's mostly got it running correctly here. You can see that 78 of Derek Murphy is slowly but surely catching up here, though. Making some ground back up on the rest of the field here. Could potentially see Murphy climb a couple of positions later on in this event. The main battle going on here around the speedway here is the battle between Corey Logan and Joshua Rudolph as they once again head down in turn 6. Now going into the big fast downhill corner that is turn 7 as we head back towards the main straightaway here. And it just seems like Rudolph just isn't quite able to get the same speed out of that car that these other drivers are pulling off here. There is a car around here in turns number 1 and 2, though. That's Garrett Streets off the track, and that's going to allow Corey Logan and Joshua Rudolph to start to catch up here. This might turn into a 3-way battle here for the 5th position between these 3 drivers. You have one driver down on pit lane, though. That is the number 45 of Mark Kluge, who has made the call down to pit lane. Might have some damage on that number 45 machine after all, after that contact with the outside wall. Coming out of turn number 7. We will have to see what is going on with that driver. Looks like they're putting new tires on that 45 machine and presumably fixing some damage as well, because I can't imagine that tires are really on the mind of any of these drivers in terms of actual strategy here. I may be mistaken on that, but I don't think any of these drivers are planning to take tires here. How about take a look down at our race leader, though, the number 12 of Garrett Hess, who is now up to a 3.6 second lead over the rest of the field. Absolutely dirt tracking that number 12 machine around this short little road course. Of course, coming into tonight's event with a pretty staggering points lead, and if he manages to keep this pace up in the way he's going, then he might be making that points lead even bigger here tonight, especially considering his closest competition of Garrett Streets is a whole 22 seconds back from third position, so more like a whole 33, almost 34 seconds back from Garrett Hess himself. You can see Sabelski back there, next driver in line for the race win. Slowly but surely losing ground on this number 12 machine, up to about a 4-second gap between them. And even further back is Mark Royce, who is about 7 seconds back from our second place driver of Brian Sabelski. The thing's definitely getting spread out here early at Lime Rock, but still a long way left to go here in tonight's event. Could still be anyone's game here tonight. Plenty of opportunities for Garrett Hess to make a mistake. And really plenty of opportunities for any of these front runners to make some sort of mistake and see the field get turned upside down on its head. There is the option for cautions should drivers get in a particularly bad incident. So we will have to see. Maybe the caution flag will come out at some point, and that will really jumble things up here for these drivers. You can see there Mark Royce getting around that lap car. That's the 78 of Derek Murphy. He's going around Jason Gardner. Now coming up on that driver as well. He's going to see if he can't try and close that gap up to Royce here, at least just a little bit here tonight. And big slide going down in turn number 6 for that 93 machine. Going to try and go for a pass on the outside, and he is able to do it. Now it is all clean open air, trying to catch up to these 3 podium drivers. How about we take a moment? Let's ride on board with Jason Gardner. Take a lap around this Lime Rock Park here with these drivers. Just about halfway here into tonight's event. Actually, just a little bit past halfway here into tonight's event, and you can see how much of an absolute slip and slide it is here around the speedway as Mark Royce goes off the track there down in turn number 1. That's going to allow Jason Gardner to close up the gap here pretty darn quickly between the two of them. I'll tell you what, these drivers are basically driving on ice here tonight. They are just absolutely sliding the cart around here in on every turn. There's very little grip for these drivers, and these rear tires really just want to kick out around in front of the fronts here. But so far, nothing really going on in terms of incidents otherwise around the speedway. Everyone's keeping their cars pretty much pointed in the right direction, but a lot of these drivers struggling to keep up with each other here. The gaps around the field, for the most part, just keep climbing on up. The battle we're watching here between Royce and Gardner actually is the closest battle on the speedway right now. Royce again locking it up a bit here into turn number 1. That's going to allow Gardner to close the gap up here just a little bit between the two of them now, down to, or at least it was for just a moment, down under a second between the two of them in this battle for the third and final podium position here. Only 12 minutes left to go. Those first 17 minutes went by shockingly quickly here. Just, oh wow, big wiggle for Mark Royce there coming through the uphill there. Yeah, driver setting almost exactly 1 minute laps here this evening, so pretty much looks like it's going to be about 12 laps left to go here tonight. We'll see if any of these drivers have any more mistakes, or if everyone's got settled in, gotten into a rhythm, able to hang on to their cars here for these remaining 12 laps. The battle between Royce and Gardner still closing up as Royce again having a little bit of difficulty heading down into turn number 1, losing a lot of speed on entry, but he seems to be making at least a little bit of ground back up here through the S's. We have one car off the track here. That is the 45 of Mark Kluge, who is down in the grass right now. And still keeping it down on the grass, just trying to let the rest of the field go on by here. Let's see if we can't take a look and see what exactly happened to this driver here to send him off the speedway like that. Looks like, oh, once again into the uphill, and the front tires completely come up off the ground here. And it looks like potentially a bit of handling and steering damage in that number 45 after that impact with the tire barrier. So we are able to get at least the microphone audio working here again. I think we're going to have to completely shut off the stream and turn it back on to get the race audio back going, and there is quite frankly way too much happening here on the speedway to do that for the time being. So unfortunately, we're just going to have to go without those wonderful car sounds here for just these last couple of minutes of the race, because we cannot miss this battle going on here for the race lead. Just a couple laps ago, Garrett Hess falling for the curse, also spinning it out, going down. I believe he was coming out of the right-hander turn number 4 when he spun it out, and that allowed Brian Spelski to get around him. But it is neck and neck now for the lead of this race with only 4 minutes left to go. Going to be probably about 4 laps here, maybe 5, but most likely 4 laps left to go here. And Hess is all over the rear bumper of Spelski. He's going to dive to the inside, try and make the move going down here into turn number 1. Big move down into turn number 1. Drivers side by side. Shockingly, no contact between the two of them here. It's going to be Hess that has advantage coming out of the corner, but Sabelski is on the preferred line going into the left-hander. Still neck and neck here between these two drivers. Hess falling back here just a little bit, but I imagine he's going to try and make the move once again, heading up into the uphill section. That is, if he hasn't fallen too far behind to do it, and he might just have. Down to about half a second between the two of them. Both drivers lifting their front tires off the ground, heading through the uphill section, ramping off that hill. But it's still neck and neck here as once again Hess starts to close the gap, heading down the straightaway here. Of course, running in open setups here tonight, so it's very possible that these cars are running different gear ratios, different tunings from each other. Normally fixed setups on the ovals, but here on these road courses we have open setups for them. A little bit of a tire lock up there for Garrett Hess here, as we have only 3 minutes of competition left to go here in tonight's event between these two drivers. If Hess is going to make a move, it's going to have to be now or never in these next 2 laps, because I believe it should be 2 to go. Once these drivers come back around the speedway, we won't be able to know for sure, unfortunately, until after the checkered flag comes out between these two drivers. As big wiggle out, Garrett Hess again. Big wiggle for the number 12 machine. Gets down in the grass a little bit, but he's still managing to hang on to the rear of that number 85 machine. And he might be able to make a move here going through turn number 7. Both cars were sliding big time coming out of the final corner, going down the Sam Posey straight here. Down the inside is the 78 of Derek Murphy, who wants absolutely nothing to do with this battle here. And again, Hess tries to make the move going down into turn number 1. Big tire lockup, little bit of a nudge there with Sabelski. He's going to make the move happen here. But again, big wiggle out the corner. That's going to cost him some ground. Now Sabelski back up to the race lead, at least for the time being, side by side. Again, big wiggles between the two of them. I think Garrett Hess has absolutely cooked his tires here into the grass there just a little bit. It is still neck and neck between these two drivers. They're going to be going side by side into the uphill here. Both drivers off the track there a little bit going through the uphill with 1 minute and 30 left to go. It's going to be Garrett Hess leading the way. Sabelski just behind. 0.5 of a second closing down between the two of them, heading through the downhill for turn number 7, coming across the start-finish line. This should be the white flag this time by, if I'm not mistaken. Again, not really any way to sure. This is either the white flag or 2 to go, but unfortunately our broadcasting software not able to pick up on that information 100% certain. I'm going to go on the assumption that this is the white flag lap, unless proven otherwise when they cross the line next time by. Still the closest battle on the speedway by the long shot, and it is the battle for the race lead. Sabelski is closing the distance down to 0.3 of a second between the two of them, but will it be enough? He's going to need an absolutely optimal final sector here if he wants to make this pass. Again, this is going on the assumption here that this is the white flag lap. It may very well not be this lap. It may be next lap. But I think it might be this lap, but it's gonna be close on if the checkered flag comes out this time by or not. We might have 10 seconds or so left to make it the white flag lap. Sure enough, white flag is up in the air this time by, This is the final lap for certain here between these two drivers. Sabelski gets one more chance to try and make it happen. The checkered flag will be up next time around the speedway. And of course, you can bring up the track map here, see how spread out everyone is. It is the battle here between Sabelski and Hess for the race lead. Hess up by half a second. Last time by, he was a tenth of a second faster than Sabelski was, but Sabelski is closing here through the uphill. But 4/10 of a second back, he's going to absolutely have to nail these two corners. But Hess slides a little bit. Not quite enough for Sabelski to catch up here. Heading down into the final corner for the final time here this evening. Down to 3/10 of a second. Will Sabelski be able to draft off to him to get to the front of this battle? No, he will not. Garrett Hess takes home the checkered flag here at Lime Rock Park. Hess takes home the checkered flag. How about this battle here for fourth here as Mark Royce rounds out the tail end of the podium here. Jason Gardner bringing it home back in fourth. And Garrett Streets, who is all the way back heading into the uphill right now, will be rounding out the field as the last driver to still be on the lead lap here this evening as he brings that number 15 machine around. What an event it has been here tonight. Of course, Hess and Sabelski here on their cooldown lap. Just bringing the car back around as Streets goes ahead and crosses the line as the last driver still on the lead lap, 54 seconds back here. But how about it for Garrett Hess and Brian Sabelski? An absolutely exceptional battle between these two drivers, coming down to only 3/10 of a second here. Of course, Garrett Hess going to be burning it down here at the Lime Rock Park, celebrating getting win number 4 of the season, furthering his points lead even further here tonight. Heck of a run by the driver of that number 12 machine. Led almost every single lap here. Of course, had a little bit of a hiccup earlier in the goings, but he managed to battle his way up to the front, and Garrett Hess able to get it done here tonight. Now, don't go anywhere, race fans. We will be back here in just a moment. Going to get some words with your top 3 finishers here this evening. Alrighty, race fans, welcome back to the Lime Rock Park. Welcome back to season number 17 of the ASRC Oval Series. One heck of a race here in the books, one heck of a finish here. It was an absolute nail biter one here tonight. It's going to be none other than Mr. Garrett Hess, just barely eking out over Brian Sabelski here this evening. Garrett, how are you feeling here tonight?
Uh, Relieved, a little bit embarrassed, and thankful that we have clean racers in this league.
Yeah, definitely. For the most part, a pretty clean race here. We had a couple of drivers have a little bit of instance in the early goings of things, and of course, we had that little bit of a scare with you right towards the end, but it managed to work out for you. Were you planning to do as good as you did when you came in here tonight?
Not exactly. This car is like driving on ice. And I surely wasn't expecting me to spin from the lead or just be in the lead in the first place. That corner, I just gassed it up too much on exit, and my car just didn't have the grip. But thankful that I was able to get back up to Brian and in the closing minutes and had a great battle with him.
Good deal. Definitely quite the battle between the two of y'all. I was terrified there for most of all the end of this race, really. That I was not really sure how that was going to end, especially like you said, these cars are like driving on ice, so to go multiple laps side by side was definitely really impressive work.
Yeah, on like the I think it was like with like 3 laps to go, lap 29. Me and him are coming up the hill, and I thought I got into the corner, the right-hander up the hill, pretty nicely, but I the car just started sliding and pushing, and thankfully, thankfully Brian was gracious enough to foresee that and let off a little bit, or else we would have both been in the wall, and it probably would have been a Mark Royce win. But I do feel bad about that because I like to I like to try to give people space when I'm racing hard, and I don't want to force people into situations where they have to lift.
Fair enough. Definitely a heck of a run for you here tonight. And of course, another one to your name, even further increasing your points lead. You came into tonight as the only driver with a double digit points gap between the other drivers. So, definitely a very solid season for you so far here. Next week, heading on over to the Oxford Plains Speedway for a little bit of short tracking. Do you think maybe everyone will have a collective sigh of relief over there?
Yeah, I think so. But to be fair, Oxford Plains is pretty much like driving a flat circle, like even more so than Charlotte Legends, because at least Charlotte Legends you get a little bit of a straightaway, but with Oxford Plains you're pretty much constantly turning left. So it's definitely going to be interesting. I haven't done that combo before, so I'll have to learn it, but I'm looking forward to it, and it should be a lot of fun.
Good deal. Of course, after that, we have Lanier Dirt, Darlington, Texas Road Course, USA Speedway Dirt, and then South Boston to round out the second half of the season. Are you still feeling confident about your odds here for taking a championship?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident because if something happens at one of those tracks, the points lead that I have is giving me a little bit of a buffer. I don't know about Darlington. That seems like a little bit of a wild card race, so we'll have to but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Right now, I'm just focusing on trying to protect the points lead.
Good deal. Taking it one race at a time, but so far doing very, very good here in this mini stock season. Of course, Mr. Hess, it's been a heck of a race. I imagine you need to take a bit to go relax and celebrate another trophy to your name. So, of course, the microphone is all yours. Who do you want to thank for making things happen?
First of all, I want to thank Brian for racing me clean. He's a real smart guy. Knows how to make good races happen. And we had a blast, even though I made a mistake and pushed him a little wide. But grateful to have people like him on the service, especially with the quality of racing and official, where people like Brian wouldn't don't exist in official races. So it's good to have that escaping league racing where people will race you fair and race you clean, even if you make a mistake. I want to thank people at Team Watson Racing, great group of people over there, Team Watson Racing Setups .com for all sorts of setups like Silver Crown, Sprint Car, whatever. Want to thank my brother for giving me something to give me something to wake up in the morning for. And I want to thank you and Jason and Johnny Bell and everyone else for in the ASRC admin booth to put on the broadcast, put on the show, and keep things rolling.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out here tonight. Congratulations on another win to your name. Heck of a run for you. And I look forward to seeing you next week at Oxford Plains.
Yeah, see you then.
And finishing back up here in position number 2, 3/10 of a second. All the difference it boiled down to after 30 minutes. It's going to be Mr. Brian Sabelski up here back in second. Brian, how are you feeling here tonight?
Little bums, but hey, that's racing. It happens. I'd rather come home second than come home in the wall at this point, you know.
Fair enough. I mean, it's definitely better than some of the other drivers could say. We did have a couple of folks end up in the wall here tonight and various levels of ability to continue after it. So a clean race for you. Definitely pretty good. And another podium points finish should be bumping you up a couple of spots heading into the second half of the season.
Yeah, I don't think I'll probably get a shot at the championship with the way that Garrett's just been driving lights out all over the place. He's been winning everything, so there comes a point where you just can't overcome that. But either way, I mean, tonight was fun. It was fine racing. I'm not really too upset about anything that happened. You know, you're gonna get some door banging. You're gonna get, having to give people a little bit of room. Give and take is really important, and mistakes happen too. So you can't just be like, "Oh, that guy just ran me off the track." Well, maybe he missed the corner just a little bit. You got to give a little bit of room. So I couldn't just push him onto the curb there and then put us both in the wall. That wouldn't be fair to either of us.
Yeah, definitely very tight racing between the two of y'all in those last couple of laps. And for a couple laps there, it looked like you had the advantage going there over for him. What do you think might have had to have gone different there, if anything, for you to have taken home the checkered flag?
I think probably I just needed to get through traffic a little cleaner. Again, not really Corey's fault or anything like that. We just got to him in a bad spot, and I had to slow down a lot and then let Garrett catch up to me. But hey, that's again, that's just kind of the way this is. He didn't do anything wrong. It was just unfortunate timing on my part, and I really couldn't run him over or anything like that just because he's a car and I'm laughing. That's not cool either. So you just gotta deal with it. But we had some good racing there, so yeah, like I said, I can't complain too much.
Fair enough. Definitely still a solid performance for you, and still half the season left to go to potentially be taking home some checkered flags. Next week, though, we're giving y'all a break from all this seesawing on the wheel y'all have had to do. You get to hold it at one nice little angle and just have the car go in a perfect circle all night. How are you feeling about Oxford Plains?
Uh, Maybe time to work on getting some muscle strength in the arms for that because it's just turn left, turn left, turn left the whole night. So it should be interesting. It's going to be really difficult to pass, I think. So I have a premium on A, qualifying, and B, tires. I think will also, if not wear, temperatures will definitely play a factor next week.
Fair enough. I figured that maybe holding it in one angle would be easier than going left and right, but I'm the broadcaster and not the driver, so maybe I'm mistaken there.
It seems easier, but it's probably not easy to go fast, because those short tracks where you're just like constantly turning it takes a little bit of understanding how to get them just to be just right and not like burn your crap up.
Fair enough. Definitely will be an interesting race to see nonetheless. And of course, heading on to a dirt track after that and then the big oval of Darlington. So still a lot of variety left in the season. Are any of those tracks in particular ones you're eyeing for potential wins at?
Maybe Darlington. I like that track. I run well there in most things, so I'll be very interested to see if I can kind of, make the magic happen there like it's happened in the past. So we'll see how that one shakes out.
Fair enough. Either way, heck of a run for here tonight, and I'm very excited to see what y'all are able to do in the latter half here of the season. But of course, before I let you go here for the night and celebrate your podium finish, the microphone is all yours, Mr. Sabelski. Who do you want to thank for making things happen?
Of course, thanks to you for broadcasting it and Jason for the league, Maconia Setup Shop, official setup shop of eNASCAR, SM Racing Products for doing their thing with both the button boxes and with the sponsor in the league. So, yeah, that's about it. And thanks everyone hanging out here on Twitch. Good to have you here. Love y'all.
You heard it here first, race fans. Your top 2 finishers so far here, at least. Unfortunately, looks like we are not able to get our 3rd place finisher of Mark Royce up in the broadcast booth here for the evening. We'll give it a little bit more time, see if we can't get him up here for it, but I don't think we were able to hear from him the previous week either, so we might not be able to hear from that number 7 machine here this evening. But we'll give it a little bit. We'll see if we aren't able to get him up in here for it. Of course, Mark started back in the 4th position, so up 1 spot from where he qualified, managed to get around Jason Gardner. And actually, looks like it was a pretty close finish between the 2 of them as well at the tail end of this thing. Either way, we'll give it a few more moments, see if we can't hear from that driver, but we might not be able to hear from him here this evening. We might also potentially be hearing from League Administrator Mr. Jason Gardner here as well. We will have to see about that. Lots of what ifs up here in the broadcast booth here tonight, race fans. But either way, it was a crazy race here this evening, so I guess it only makes sense to have a little bit of a crazy post-race here as well. Had some nice on-brand technical difficulties mid-race. It was a heck of a time here at Lime Rock. But we're going to give it just a minute here to see if either of those drivers want to come on up in here and get a word in. Otherwise, that might be all she wrote here from the Lime Rock Park here for round number 6 of the season. Of course, next week, going to be doing a little bit of short tracking at the ever so tiny, ever so treacherous Oxford Plains Speedway. Alrighty, it does look like we got word from both drivers that we're not able to hear from them, unfortunately. But I will go ahead and spill the beans because I did get mentioned privately from Mr. League Administrator Jason Gardner to go ahead and announce the game plan for the ASRC Oval Series next season. Next season, going to be going back to a little bit of NASCAR competition, not in the Gen 4 car this time around, and it looks like probably not for the full 36 race long, year-long competition. But it looks like we are going to be going driving in the truck series for season number 18. So that is bound to be fun. I'd imagine there's probably going to be a pretty good mix of big ovals, short ovals, all sorts of stuff on there. I've seen a rough estimate on what the schedule might be for that truck series. And I'll tell you what, if it ends up working out how it's planned to work out, it is bound to be one interesting season in those NASCAR trucks. But of course, still got 5 more races left to burn through here in the mini stock before we head back up into those more powerful NASCAR racing machines. So that is bound to be a fun time. But for now, before I let y'all go, of course, though we did talk to our top 2 finishers here tonight when I'm unable to get the 3rd driver Mark Royce up in here for the podium interviews. But those weren't the only drivers here in tonight's event, so how about we take a look down at our unofficial race results as they stand for how the rest of the field did here this evening. Of course, Garrett has Brian Zabelski, Mark Royce, your top 3 finishers here tonight. Then back and forth, we have the number 93 of Jason Gardner, followed by the 15 of Garrett Streets, rounding out the top 5 here this evening. Then back in 6th, we had the CZ Robotics 24 of Corey Logan, followed by the 188 K9P racing entry of Joshua Rudolph. Then back in 8th, the 78 of Mr. Derek Murphy, followed by the 45 of Mark Kluge back in 9th. Then back in 10th, the 42 of Michael Sparks and the number 4 of Daniel Sparks, who was unfortunately unable to make the grid, rounding out the tail end of the field. That said, though, that's just about all we got here from the Lime Rock Park. So thank you all for tuning in to one crazy, hectic ASRC Oval Series race here tonight. Definitely a fun time up here in the broadcast booth and a crazy time down on the raceway. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing y'all next week. Have a good evening.